Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your daily huddle. I am your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and I don't want you to have the reflection from my glasses. I'm going to take them off. Happy Thursday. Happy Spiritual Matters Thursday. This is not the day that you get to be all holy and sanctified, thinking that you have to be on your Sunday best. No, no, no. Oh, no, no, no. This is the day when we put our faith and our beliefs and our assumptions and our questions on the table, no matter how messy or contradictory or cantankerous. Ah, you like how I did that? You should have been here before we went live so that you can get the reference. So that you can grapple with those things and solidify your foundation. We're talking today about what is the difference between spirituality and religion. And let me share with you a story. I, like many Latin Americans and Caribbean people, was raised Catholic. And if you know anything about the Catholic faith in the Caribbean and Latin America, that means that we were in church all the freaking time. Tuesday was catechism, Wednesday was Bible study, Thursday was choir, Saturday was rehearsal, and then Sunday was the actual thing. Some other denominations have the same kind of, relentless schedule, Pentecostal, Baptist, etc. And I became persona non grata in San Pio X, which was the parish where my parents belonged to, because I asked too many daggone questions. I got kicked out of catechism 7 times until they finally expelled me. And my parents were like begging me, I beg of you, the bar is really low. All you have to do is say nothing. Just say nothing. Just get through an hour of, the priest or whoever the teacher was, just let them do their thing and then come home in one piece and we'll be fine. And then I went off to boarding school away from my parents, and I discovered Phillips Academy Andover in Massachusetts had a huge library, and I started digging and asking questions about other people's religions and other people's traditions. It's when my world opened, because I met with international students and so forth. And then I went off to college. I went to the University of Miami, and that library was even bigger. And I think I have always been in a question of what is the difference between my relationship to the church versus my relationship to God, because they're not synonymous. I've quickly discovered. And does my faith imply blind compliance? Does obedience mean blind compliance? Or does obedience mean alignment with spiritual principles, such that it doesn't feel like a stretch, it doesn't feel like such a big sacrifice to be obedient? So I started asking these questions. And then when I got really good and grown, like my children were grown, I decided to pursue a PhD in comparative religions in addition to the PhD in psychology. And my friends, particularly grown people who had, their own faith walk, would ask me, don't you think this is going to be the final nail in the coffin of your relationship to God? Don't you think this is going to almost take the magic away, and then you're just going to become an atheist when you study all these things, because you're no longer going to believe in God if you really look behind the curtain? My response to that was, if all it takes to obliterate your belief in God is a look behind the curtain, it's not really a belief, it is a fable. And it's worth dismantling. So I rolled up my sleeves and I went to grad school, and guess what happened? Guess what happened? Robin, you know the end of the story. My faith actually got stronger. My faith actually got stronger, and I started to understand and really get in my cells in my body, like an embodied understanding, knowing that there is a remarkable difference between a relationship with the divine intelligence, the creator of all things, and the institutions that purport to represent that divine intelligence. and their related authority figures. And when you divest yourself from that agenda, you are free to pursue a direct line of communication and direct identification, which is the part that people don't really want to talk about, with the divine. So is there a difference between spirituality and religion? It depends on the maturity of your spiritual walk. For some people, there isn't one. Just like a 3-year-old doesn't know the difference between mom and God. To the 3-year-old, mom and dad are God. They know everything, they can do no wrong. They have your survival in their hands, and your emotional and psychological health and wellness depends on their approval of you and their love and care of you. And it's only when you become an adult and you become self-sufficient that you then shift your relationship to your parents, and you actually can see their humanity, you can see their foibles, you can see their flaws, you can see their gaps, and not castigate them for them, but actually reparent yourself so that whatever it is that you did, that you needed that didn't get, you indemnify them from having to have given it to you, and you start giving it to yourself. Or you look for it in other places, because one monkey don't stop no show. So it's kind of the same thing as, as above, so below. The micro and the macro are mirror images of each other. That same path happens with our divine parentage, our divine lineage. We think God can do no wrong, and it's the inerrant word of God, and you can't question this, and then you start questioning them. You go through your inner teenager moment. I'm gonna do what I want to do. And then when you get in trouble, you're like, Mom, I'm in jail, can you bail me out? And you have the same relationship with guys like, oh shit, let me pray so that I can pay these taxes, so I can pay these bills, so I can save this marriage, so I can lose this weight, so I can get this money. And eventually you mature into a relationship where it's like, I am God. And not like at the exclusion of like, I'm God and you're not, but rather that you can be and see God in everything and everyone. And even the things that don't make sense to you, the things that you don't agree with particularly, you then begin to question them and create curiosity around it as opposed to judgment. And you begin to take ownership of the ways in which you navigate the world without assigning blame to parents, how you were raised, culture, et cetera, et cetera. That's not to say that there aren't systems at work, okay? Because that's also a very Western patriarchal capitalistic point of view, to just be individualistic and unconnected to the systems in which we participate and live in. That's not to ignore that. But it is to say, however, that you can dance with those systems, that you can participate with those systems without being at their mercy. So I'm going to take a wild, unprecedented, damn near uneducated guess and wager that if you're here in the Daily Huddle, particularly in the Spiritual Matters Thursday, that you too, diddly-do, assign yourself the label of spiritual and not religious. In fact, I have direct experience that people who thought themselves to be religious were extremely triggered by the conversation and the presence of folks that were like, nope, it's bigger than that. And then if it doesn't align with your interpretation, albeit literal, then either I'm wrong or you're crazy. And, sometimes you're being triggered deactivates your critical thinking, and that's not necessarily a problem. That's just the beginning of exploration. Okay. So Florence has her hands up. Florence, what would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, as usual, I feel that we're vibrating at the same level.
You're muffled and I can't really make out what you're saying.
Okay. I think I know what's going on. It's the headphones that I have on
Okay.
that are causing that kind of situation. I'm trying to take them off. Are you hearing me any better?
No.
Yeah? Okay, so I guess I have to come on. Jesus.
Free
It's
yourself.
the
Free yourself of the headphones.
headphones. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to try again.
Okay.
I'm saying, are you hearing me any better?
Yes, yes. Go ahead and say what you wanted to say. I'll make out. I'll make it out.
I was just saying that I vibrate. I feel I vibrate at the same level that you are. But for me, I'm definitely more spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
non-denominational. Just take everything like from like every religion, and that happened when I was about 11 in school when my teacher said something about the religion I was affiliated with, and I knew she was wrong. And I thought, if she is wrong about what she is saying, she's an adult and she truly believes what she's saying, but she's wrong about our religion,
Yeah.
then the things that my religion is teaching me about other religions might need to be questioned also.
Oh my goodness, the beginning of wisdom.
Yes.
Questions are the
So
creative acts of intelligence.
I thought like two sides of the coin, and I really learned to see two sides of the coin since I was very, very young.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Not to just accept anything just at face value.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. I think that also, um, let me see, how do I want to say this? Before we got online, before we started live streaming, I was joking rather, with Gio that I'm feeling quite cantankerous. And I didn't mean like bitchy or like mad or whatever, but more like, suffer no fools. Like let's just call a thing a thing. Let's call it what it is. And for some people, that sometimes lands as disagreeable. Uh, but I say that because the thought that came to mind just now is that there is a particular theology of suffering, a theology of oppression that purports that the more you suffer and the more that you are oppressed, the closer that you are to God. And it feels mistranslated. I'm going to say that. It feels mistranslated. It's not so much that suffering is a sign of holiness or that oppression is a sign of somehow spiritual superiority. But what I am going to say is that when someone is either systemically or individually oppressed or has experienced some level of suffering, there's a perspective widening empathy that happens that isn't available from a position of privilege. Like you have to have gone through something in order for you to empathize with the journey of other people, to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because when you were down and out, you wanted somebody to put themselves in your shoes and help you out, right? And so when we suffer or when we are systemically oppressed, etc., we can, as human beings, that's not like a race or a gender or generational thing, just in general, the human experience. When we suffer, um, we tend to want to find meaning in that suffering. That's the whole point of Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning while he was going through the Holocaust experience. We want to find meaning in our suffering, give it purpose, give it a reason. Because mindless, purposeless suffering for no good goddamn reason feels cruel and sadistic. And we gravitate, just like plants gravitate towards the sunlight, we as human beings in our psychology gravitate towards purpose. And so we are meaning making machines. If we If there isn't one defined, we will assume one and assign it based on our lived experience and our assumptions. Laura says, when we find the cause of suffering, it can stop. Not always. Not always. Certainly not at the collective level. There's a lot of forces that have a vested interest in making sure that people stay in the positions that they're in. Otherwise, the system cannot sustain itself. And Florence says the people who oppress others are in fear. I can see that. Certainly in lack, certainly in insufficiency. And I heard a philosopher a long time ago say something to the effect of, again, I'm paraphrasing, you can tell how old or how mature a civilization is by how community oriented it is and how much it shies away from violence. So a civilization that has built itself on power, on force versus power, on oppressing, on standing on the necks of somebody else, that's a toddler civilization. It hasn't been here very long. Because when we are here long, just like a human being who has been here long, there's certain, we just don't major in the minors no more. We're like, you know what? I ain't got time for that. That's not as important. I have enough perspective. I have enough lived experience to know that is not important. That is not the crux of the thing. But if you haven't been here long, you know, when you're like 13 and you have a crush on somebody, you really do think that your heart has broken into a million pieces and you will not survive this high school situation. You really do think that, but that's because you've only been here for 13 years. You know, Laura, you have your hand up.
Yes, good
Hi.
morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Family, thank you for this conversation. Loving the vibes, loving the vibes. And like you, well, I made that statement about suffering
Mhm.
because of my experience with co-creating suffering. I excommunicated myself from the church at
Ah,
11 years old. And I used to find all the faults and criticize and all these people are hypocrites and not knowing that it was my grief at the time, my inner turmoil was going on. But giving thanks to Spirit, I left the church.
Mm.
So now that I'm discovering or uncovering some of the causes of my experiences, I am finding myself being more tolerant, being accept accepting others' ways of life,
Yeah.
and being just being more tolerant and just accepting
Yeah.
of who you are, what you are. You do what you want. You do you. I do me. But I love the concept of the difference between religion and spirituality because I had grown to see religion as outside of me and spirituality as within me.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm complete. I'm complete. Thank
That's
you.
a good distinction. Thank you for that one. That was great. So religion outside and spirituality is within. I like it. I like the idea that the word universe etymologically represents one song, uni meaning one and verse meaning song. And what I have discovered in my studies, in my reading, in my travels, in my talking to people, in my coaching career, etc., is that there really is one song that we are all singing. There really is one core desire that we are all aiming for. And there really is one main theme that all of nature and civilizations and artifacts and so forth, that they all are the threads of that particular quilt, as it were, called the human experience or consciousness. And it's a little bit like when I speak English and you speak Spanish and you say amor and I say love, and because it sounds different, we think we're saying different things, but we're actually saying the same thing in whatever language we're speaking. And that to me is what happens with religious traditions. Gio, you have your hand up. Yes, sir.
The one song, I have two things now to say. The one theme, the one song in all languages, is it survival?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it love? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's a thought.
That's a thought, yeah. And what I was kind of what was being blossoming, or what I was discovering in the conversation,
Yeah.
what I was present in the conversation, is this aspect of religion, this aspect of spirituality, and this aspect of my relationship with the physical world, and the way, in an objective way, without looking at religion or without looking at spirituality, there is a relationship I have with the world objectively through the scientific method of investigation, if you will. And what I was kind of, what was coming up for me in this conversation is that each conversation gives me access to the next conversation. Like religion in many ways has given me access to spirituality,
Yeah.
the possibility of spirituality in many ways for me. And at some point, as I was making the transition, religion became something I made wrong. As the more I study it, it was like, oh no, I gotta make it wrong.
Yeah.
And then as the more I dove into the possibility of what spirituality is for me, then I was like, no, I'm not going to make religion wrong anymore. It was my access to it. It's the access to all of it. With making wrong spirituality is making wrong the animal kingdom. It's like, it is what it has been,
Mm-hmm.
And then there is this transition at some point after, was like, I don't want to deal with spirituality, neither religion. Let me look at the world the way that it is. Let me study the world. And I love that quote from Albert Einstein. I think it's Albert Einstein that says, spare me the details or spare me your opinion. I want to know how God thinks. And science is my access to see how God thinks. Not your opinion about it, not how you feel about it. And so that was kind of fun for me. I was like, yeah, I'm all down for that. Let me see how God thinks. I don't want to know how people feel about the world. I want to see if I can measure it.
Right.
But then I thought, yeah, but my access to the way God thinks has been my spirituality. So the physical world gives me access to my spiritual world. And absent of the physical world, there's no spiritual world for me. So I'm kind of connecting it all in many ways right now.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I love it. There's you are quoting Jesus in the Bible when he says nobody comes to the Father except through me. And in my interpretation of that verse, nobody meaning like the physical world cannot access the spiritual world without Christ consciousness, without the hero, the Heru, the Horus, the messianic, the question of what's my role and what do I get to say about this, right? And traditional religion wouldn't translate what Jesus just said in the way that I just did. But that's what I hear in what you're sharing, that it's like, it's not to discard the physical, it's not to discard the animal kingdom, it's not to discard religion, but rather see it as a pathway to a deeper understanding or a higher level of perspective on it. I love it.
I refute. When I die, I'll have a few questions for God. Hopefully, Hopefully she's available.
Yes. Yes.
And you know how we have in Spanish this game, I think probably in English too, with the flower, me quiere, no me quiere, me quiere, no me quiere, me quiere, no me quiere, me quiere, no me quiere. And it always ends up on me quiere, right?
Yes, he loves me not.
Loves me not. It always ends up on you love me. For me, at least my game, people always love me.
Yes, right. And if not, then we go to the root and the leaves.
Exactly.
Right.
I find that no matter the game I play or how messed up my life is, I just don't find that God in her infinite wisdom is doing, she loves me, he loves me not. He loves me, he loves me not. Oh, you did love me, enter. You did not love me, you cannot enter. I think the complexity of being human is not being judged by a higher power.
I would agree. It's not judged. Yeah, not like a manager on your shift, and then if you don't do your shift right, they fire you. Not like that.
Yeah, highly unlikely.
Right.
Okay, there's so many hands up. This is what you did, Monica. You see?
Yeah, we started something. Michelle, you have your hand up.
Oh. Hey, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Which one?
Michelle, and then Rashida, and then Cece.
Okay. Good morning, family.
Hello.
Great topic. And I too, growing up in the Caribbean. Oh, excuse me. I was trying to take myself off of them. So I too, growing up in the Caribbean, Catholic, and being taken to church, and it didn't. Even though I was young and little, it didn't feel right. And I couldn't get with this damnation and hell and concept of God recording your bad deeds in a big book and all of that stuff. I was too young to understand religion, but I know it didn't feel like it. It was scary.
Yeah.
Being in the church, scary. Standing up, kneeling down. Oh my God! Stand up, kneel down, and the cat, and the whole thing, and catechism, and all of that. And when I became a teenager and I was allowed to visit my friends' churches, the ministers, pastors, whomever, they were also beating that same drum, sinner and bad and have to do right. But it felt better because there was music and dance and celebration. So I was going for a feeling. So I would go because we were dancing and it was entertaining and people were jumping and shouting and getting Holy Ghost and stuff. So I stayed there. When I became in my early 20s, somebody invited me to a Unity church. And that felt good on all the levels. It felt right. It made sense. It felt welcoming, and the idea of spirit and oneness appealed to me. And as I learned more truth principles, it just led to more opening and more opportunities. And I could even say it brought me all the way here to you guys. Because that thread and truth and resounding and the feeling again of the truth and the message. Yeah. And always a student. And I just wanted to say to what Gio says, I remember he loves me not. And I think the game that Mother, Father, God would play with, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.
I love it. I love it so much.
I am complete.
Thank you, Michelle. Rashida, you got something?
Grand Rising, everyone. Grand Rising, my dear beloved family. I'm telling you.
Grand Rising, Mastermind Queen Rashida.
Grand Rising. I am so happy that you continue the topic from last week into this week. And I dig some more. And I remember growing up, no Catholic. I was my family, and I came from a 7-day Adventist family setting. How did I hate that stuff? Is unbelievable. At 12 years old, I was revealed. I said, listen, I am not going back to that church. This church was just for me, was every Saturday they need to have a new dress, and I said, "Oh, this is a show. This is a show." So I end up going into the Episcopal Church, stayed there for 48 years until today. But I remember good because that was my mom's side, that she was a Seventh-day Adventist, but my grandparents' side, from my father's side, they was Indian. And they have this tribe and this fire ritual, and it was just complete. It was two different worlds. I grew up with two different worlds, and then I end up having my own world. I was like, wait a minute, these people is imposing on me and giving me what I don't need. I'm going to find myself. So at 16, I started to say, you know what, this is who I am, who I want to be. I'm going to feed that spirit that I know that live in me. So I awakened that spirit early in my life. And until today, I still just feed that spirit, that God person and God that live in me is what I feed. And I act like one. I feel like one. So that growth of spirituality that I live by is what I feed myself with. When I do my fast and when I do ayahuasca, I am just full of spirituality. So I think each one of us as individual is our own creator. We create what we want to be today and tomorrow and forever.
Awesome.
Ashe. Thank you.
Rashida. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you, everybody, for your contribution. Cece, I saw you put your hand down. Did you want to say something before we head out, even though we're...
Yes. I thank everybody for their sharing their experience. But what I learned is I don't want religion. I want relationship. So I'm intentional about creating a vertical relationship with God and not look at anybody else, because that's none of my business. And how dare I judge anybody else because of their own personal experience or not experience. But I have a personal relationship that has been developed over time. And I do go to organized church, and I do believe that some people don't have it all the way right, but that's not up to me to judge. It's up to me to seek who God is myself and do what pleases God, not what pleases myself. So that's what I've learned, and not to be judgmental towards people who have their own relationship, because it's theirs. It's not mine. And it's not mine to even point a finger at. I need to work out my own. So I'm going to pass, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cece. I'm going to have this conversation. This is going to be a part one. I didn't know this until we actually were in it, but this is going to be a part one. Part two, next week, we're going to talk about the ways in which we separate ourselves from God. I hear it a lot in people's language, and they say, well, there's, what God wants, and then there's what I want, as though me and my Father are not one. So that speaks to a lot of the maturity in that consciousness, and we're going to talk about that in a later episode. Thank you so much for bearing with us and staying past our half-hour slot. Thank you for the extra 6 minutes you just granted us. I appreciate you. And so remember, of course, get yourself some good sleep, okay? The reason why I showed up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed is because I went to sleep super early last night, honey, and I came ready, okay? So get you 6 or 7, 8 or 9, depending on, your hormone situation, hours of sleep. Drink some water, stay hydrated, give of yourself love, laugh, twerk. I know we're supposed to say exercise, but twerking is a Kundalini raising spiritual activity, okay? Get it together. And of course, eat more plant-based. And last but never least, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Always audit your assumptions. Make sure that you do not allow your triggers to deactivate your critical thinking, okay? Always carry that with you. That's your best weapon. We love you. See you next time.
Love you. Have a wonderful day.